Would you believe me if I told you that one of the greatest investors in the world wasn't Warren Buffett, but instead was a code breaker in the US during the Vietnam War? And that'd probably be pretty surprising to you if you have never heard of the man himself, Jim Simons. But what actually makes Jim Simons one of the greatest investors of all time? Well, with the strategies being implemented by Renaissance Fund, which is his hedge fund, and the way that they've outbeat the market year after year after year is that they pull in massive amounts of data sets to ultimately figure out what might actually happen next in the stock market or for a particular industry. And with this widely successful strategy, they've been able to pull in an average of around 40% per year, doubling the 20% that Warren Buffett typically makes. And remember that this is just the stock market that we're talking about, where the average returns for the S&P 500 are around 9.8% per year, averaged over the last 90 years, which means that that 10% figure is considered great by many investors. And if you happen to continuously beat that 10% year after year after year, you're considered one of the greatest investors when it comes to picking individual stocks.
Now, Lamborghini.
Which is why with just 20% results, Warren Buffett has been acclaimed one of the greatest investors of all time. And so let's talk about the exact stocks that Jim Simons owns, so that way you can reverse engineer some of his strategies and apply it to your own investing style. So without any further ado, let's talk about the first industry that he's most heavily invested in, and that is the manufacturing industry. And in that category, we're going to talk about the 3 stocks that make up right around 6% of his entire portfolio. And those stocks are as follows: Novo Nordisk, Nvidia, and Moderna. I don't think that any 3 of these actually need an explanation of what they are and or why he's invested, but Moderna is a biological manufacturing company. Nvidia makes GPUs, semiconductors, and a whole lot of other electronic goods. And Novo Nordisk deals with a lot of insulin manufacturing. And since a lot of the world is type 1 and type 2 diabetic, and the numbers are continuously rising year after year, there's no wonder why he's so heavily invested in Novo Nordisk. Now, the next sector we're going to be talking about is the information sector, and some of his top plays in this sector happen to be companies you have probably heard of and probably own. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Zoom Technologies, but his highest holding position in this sector is actually called Atlassian Corporation, which is a software publishing company. Those 4 companies combined hold around 4% of his entire portfolio. And the next sector in his portfolio is finance and insurance. And his top holdings in this sector are companies you might have not heard of, like Molina Healthcare or Aon or CBOE, and even a company that we have talked about on this channel before, which is Upstart Holdings, and for good reason. If you followed along, that is one of the companies that we talked about really early on when Upstart was just around $70 and $80 per share, and now is over $350 per share for Upstart. And all of these companies have returned him already anywhere from 50 all the way to 300% in return. And the crazy thing is, Upstart is one of his newest holdings, and at the same time has already produced over 178% in returns for his portfolio. So if you want to be early to the party like me or Jim Simons, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you don't miss an update video on any of these stocks that we talk about on the channel. And hopefully through videos like this, you find out more companies that you might have never ever heard about, and maybe even adding them to your own portfolio after doing some due diligence, of course. But let's talk about the last sector that we have on our list and a few of the companies that make up that sector as well. And that happens to be the retail sector. This sector makes up almost 4% of his entire portfolio as well, including big companies like Target, Amazon, Kroger, and even Walmart. And now you might be wondering, what are the companies he's actually buying and selling? Because even though this is actually his portfolio, there's got to be companies that he's probably buying and selling actively as we speak. So before I let you go, let me go through some of those right now. So one of his biggest buys, where he increased his position size by about 1,500%, which actually happens to be Amazon. And for good reason, because if you look at the chart, it's actually consolidating really nicely and is likely to pop off again in the short medium term. The next one he's buying is Nvidia, which makes sense because we are on a chip shortage all around the world, and Nvidia being one of the biggest chip manufacturers will likely mean very, very good things in the medium to long term for Nvidia stock, which is why he added over 151% to his Nvidia holdings. Another big one on the list that we talked about is Microsoft, which he increased his share size by about 300% in this company very, very recently. Another big one that we talked about is Moderna, which he increased 94% of his portfolio position in this stock as well. And I had to mention this one even though it wasn't on our list for one of the biggest positions in his portfolio, and that happens to be Apple stock. And even though it is one of the most expensive companies in the world already, he actually added 229% to this position as well. Now, of course, those aren't all of the companies that he's bought or added positions to over the last few months, but those are some of his biggest holdings, also the biggest additions to his portfolio. So hopefully you got a lot of value from this video. If you did, it would mean the world to me if you smash the like button. But if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe, and YouTube suggests that you might enjoy these two videos as well.